Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays and STORRS podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Store Media Network. I'm your host, Kanaye, and it's been a little while since I've uploaded on this podcast. Overall, even with the Court Storm, both me and Josh have kind of ran into some scheduling conflicts and just been a little busy. So again, apologize that there was no episode that went up last weekend. I believe I did mention that was going to be a possibility on the last episode that went up on this podcast, which I believe is 2 Saturdays ago now. So again, I apologize for the lack of an episode last Saturday, but you guys are going to be getting one today on Saturday, January 31st, the day that you guys will be seeing this. UConn takes the trip up to Omaha to play at Chi Health Center, a place that they've really struggled playing and being able to take home wins on the road at. Of course, last year, thanks to Liam McNeely's out-of-body experience where he went for 38, UConn was able to take home the win last year. But this year, it's a little different. Creighton struggled. UConn has been the wagon in the Big East to start the year. And I'm, of course, going to preview that really quickly towards the end of this episode. But we also have three big win breakdowns to get to as well between Georgetown, Villanova, Providence, just the ones that I wasn't able to cover since the last time I uploaded. But before we get into all of that today, please engage with this podcast or anything else you see on the Court Storm channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about this media network. Everything goes a really long way with influencing YouTube's algorithm and getting more people to see our videos. Also, be sure to turn on post notifications so you are the first to see our latest content. So let's get right into it. I'll start with the Georgetown game. This game was ugly. I think going in, I very much felt that both Georgetown and Villanova were going to be ugly games, just the way that both those programs play defensively. Of course, UConn's defense this year is good enough to hang with any team in the country. And when you put two good defenses on the floor, it's obviously probably going to be a game that's played in the 60s, game that's not all too high score, not really shootout. And that's what it was in Georgetown, against Georgetown, I should say. UConn won 64-62. The way Georgetown kind of plays defense is they run a zone press to try to burn seconds off the shot clock, which of course when a program like UConn, I should say, that runs such elaborate sets that take a long time to develop and ultimately get a shot out of, it's tougher to be able to get those better looks, and you're kind of forced to a point where you're in scramble mode and you have to throw it to Silas or Malachi, whichever one of the two is on the floor, to try to go make a play. But I mean, really, I think early on, UConn was able to remedy some of that applied defensive pressure from the Hoyas with the play of Terrace Reed. I think they made it an effort to establish him down low early. Really back-to-back games between this one and the Seton Hall one, which they played earlier in the week on that Tuesday. Terrace Reed established himself down low very early in the game. Terrace Reed finished this game against Georgetown with 15 points, 11 rebounds. I thought early on he was unstoppable, and he did kind of quiet as the game went on. He seemed to disappear a little bit. I do think some of that could be foul trouble. But outside of Terrace, there's not a lot of good to write home. Offensively speaking, out of UConn's performance, Caravan struggled from the floor. Solo, you could have made the argument that this was Solo's worst game of the year, where he went 0 for 5 from 3, and it really got to a point where you could tell he was just so in his head. And he might still be. I think some of that could be the wrist injury, which I'm going to touch on once I get to the Providence recap, but Solo struggled. Silas was solid. He was 4 for 7 from the floor. I felt he had timely shots throughout the game. Got out and did the assist stuff that he normally does. He racked up 4 rebounds, and he was just the calming presence throughout the game. I mean, very reminiscent of T. New when he was there. And I got to say, Silas, I definitely am a firm believer that Silas has turned the corner at this point in the season, so it's really good to see. Braylon struggled in this game shooting from beyond the arc and just overall wasn't the most efficient. I'll touch on his concussion once we get to the Villanova recap. But, the bench was also not really a factor. And that of course, we've seen some games where the bench has come on since this Georgetown one, but definitely I think it kind of added to my concerns about whether the bench really was kind of going to be non-existent going forward, and if Hurley was really going to shrink the rotation, kind of stick to his front 6 players, front 7. So I definitely think that it was a little worrisome, and definitely for a team that is fighting to try to get back to that top 25 in offensive efficiency on KenPom, these 2 games against Georgetown and Villanova did not really help their case whatsoever in that category. But overall, I mean, a win is a win. You got to take it. It was ugly. The win margin wasn't as large as a lot of people, including myself, thought it could have ended up being against Georgetown, but it's the Big East. I'm going to say it over again. Even in a down year, the Big East is still a tough conference to play in. Teams, the programs, the coaches, they know each other so well. They've been playing against each other for years, but overall, still good getting this win against Georgetown. Let's get into Villanova. UConn won that game at the People's Bank Arena now. 75 to 67. I thought in this game, it seemed like solo ball was back. That was the biggest takeaway for me. Immediately coming out of that game, solo ball had 24 points, was not the most efficient, but nonetheless, it was very clear he had confidence in the shot that day. He had 5 threes, 5 for 12 overall from beyond the arc, 7 for 17 from the floor, went to the free throw line, hit a knockdown all 5 from the charity stripe. Didn't turn the ball over, which I thought was really important considering that Solo had some turnover issues, not only the last couple games leading up to this one against Villanova, but just across the entire season overall. So not turning the ball over, very good on solo ball there. 3 assists, 5 rebounds. I thought he was all over the place. I thought he played tough. Tenacity was there on the defensive end of the basketball, so that was great to see out of Solo. Just, when your player's struggling and very clearly either in his head or dealing with some sort of injury that's kind of hurt his percentages overall, I think it's important to have games where you're seeing the ball go through the net, and that's what Solo Ball I felt was able to get done in this game. And outside of him, I think another guy who played really well was Alex Caravan. If we're going to call it for what it was, Alex struggled a lot in that first half. That was really a terrible first half out of AK. I mean, he turned it around the second half. He got it going. Overall, he didn't finish the game very efficiently, but he was able to get to the line a lot in the second half, which I think was definitely a major talking point for Hurley going into the half where I believe UConn was trailing against Villanova. So just being able to bounce back from that tough first half that AK had, I think is, of course, just kind of doing the AK thing where he's able to play off other guys, find his spots, hit shots in timely moments like he did against Villanova. He had one huge 3 at one point in the game that definitely put UConn in a good position to close this game out. 8 rebounds, got on the glass. I felt he defended well at times when switched onto some of the smaller, quicker guys on Villanova like Bryce Lindsey and Caden Lewis. Outside of that, I think the other biggest talking point in this game was Braylon Mullins. Braylon actually played a really good game until he went down with the concussion. Of course, I believe he bumped into the shoulder of Devin Askew, if I'm not mistaken, and he got up. He was pretty woozy. He had to be helped over to the bench and went to the locker room, came back out. But in the moment, very clearly looked like a concussion, and that's what the official diagnosis was for Braylon. And of course, it's unfortunate. I'm sure the staff is doing their due diligence to be as precautious as possible going forward with this injury. You probably remember how they handled the AK situation last year following Maui in that dating game where he came down with a concussion and missed some time. So Braylon, I don't think he's going to be playing today on the day you guys are seeing this in Omaha against Creighton, but I would expect to see him in another half week to another week. It's definitely important because some of your bigger games are going to be coming up pretty soon. Of course, Creighton on the road starting tonight, along with some of the other games to come, like Villanova on the road, St. John's at the Garden, St. John's at home. So they got to have their full squad ready because the offense is also not going to get to where it needs to be if Braylon's not on the floor. And I'm sure, hopefully, Braylon, this won't affect him all too much the way it kind of maybe hurt Alex last year, the way I personally think kind of led to Alex's struggles from last season overall. But hopefully Braylon bounces back and gets better soon. But outside of that, I think that you didn't get much out of your bench this game. Eric played 14 minutes. Jalen Stewart played 20. I thought Jalen had some good moments defensively, as he normally does. He's embraced the glue guy role for this team this year. And that's something that should be celebrated continuously so, just because, you need guys like that in college basketball to be able to win. It's great seeing Stewie do little things that might not always go up on the box score. Outside of that, though, no one really was super spectacular. Silas Demery, I thought, had a huge overtime where he was able to get some big stops, a couple steals. He was able to score a layup that really iced the game. I believe he was also able to get to the line in this OT period as well. 7 assists in this game, 4 rebounds. He's really kind of, again, following along the lines of T. New, where he's just playing an all-around game, doesn't necessarily have to score, but can when needed, as we saw against BYU and Providence earlier this year. So a lot of good goes to Silas there. Terrace Reed, double-double in this game, 10 and 11. So good to see out Terrace. I would have liked to see him try to be a little bit more aggressive in the post. I would have liked to see UConn try to go more inside to Terrace, just because I felt like whenever he did get the ball, he was able to capitalize off those opportunities. But I understand that Duke Brennan's a pretty tough matchup. He's a double-double threat every single night that Villanova steps on the floor. And not as pretty of a win as I think a lot of people, including myself, wanted it to be. But still, winning these tight games, it's going to pay dividends in March because you're going to be playing tough teams. You're going to be in close games. And just being able to consistently find new ways to win every single night, it seems. I think that's so important. And I mean, once that offense clicks, and I still believe the offense is going to click, the guys still have the rest of February to figure it out. I mean, February hasn't even started yet when you guys are going to be seeing this. So they have a full month to figure it out. They got a couple games in March, Big East tournament. The offense is going to get there. This team is too talented for the offense to not get there. Of course, there's been some things that's held this team back in that metric. Of course, you can point to the injuries between Braylon and Terrace early in the year. Silas needing to kind of make the jump that he needed to be a UConn point guard, which I believe he has up to this point with the way he's played. Solo, I think Solo, the efficiency definitely hurts. But if he can have more games like he did against Villanova, even where he's just seeing the ball go through the net, I think that's, again, going to pay dividends for this team going into March. Braylon kind of finding some more consistent time on the court where he's already had to battle 2 injuries now this year. When he's been on the floor, he's been a little streaky, but we know he's capable of going off for 5 to 6 threes on any given night. So once they figure it out, the bench gets going the way they did against Providence, which I'm about to get into, then the offense is going to get there at some point. I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't hit the panic button. I just don't think it's a fair time to do that just yet. Now, again, good getting this win against Villanova at home. Let's get into the Providence game, which was played at Gamble Pavilion this past Tuesday night. UConn won 87-81. I thought the offense of this game was really strong. However, you need to remember that Providence is a sub 200 team defensively on KenPom. So not the greatest defensive team. They have a lot of talent. And I got to say, again, this is one of the biggest misses on me and Josh's end going into the year for our preseason predictions, where I felt the Providence Friars were going to be able to make the NCAA tournament. I loved the roster that Kim English has put together, but I think there's very clear deficiencies with the guys they have on this team. Of course, Jason Edwards is really good. He didn't play in this game. He was hurt. But guys like him, Jalen Sellers, Corey Floyd, they're talented players who can score the ball, but at times they just don't really guard all too well. Oswin Arunze is not the greatest big when it comes to he's not the greatest big outside of protecting the rim. That's really his calling card. He doesn't do great in ball screen coverage. He tends to get a little lazy when he's going under some of the screens, which leads to them dropping and giving some space for shooters to be able to hit from the mid-range or from beyond the arc. Steven Vox has been one of the most impressive freshmen in Big East play this year. Ryan Mila, they have other guys that can go off on any given night, but they just haven't. They've ran into a lot of bad luck. They've been in some close games. Of course, the one against UConn at the dunk where massive lead and they blow and lose in overtime ultimately to the Huskies. But I definitely felt that this was hopefully going to be a continuation of getting right for solo ball. And early on, it looked like it was going to be. He hit his first 3 of the night. I believe following that, he got fouled on his second 3-point attempt and went to the line and knocked down his free throws. He finished with 17 points, but did not get there very efficiently whatsoever. Got 5 for 18 overall and 2 for 10. So let's talk about the injury that I mentioned earlier. From what I know, dealing with a wrist injury and a shooting hand. And the last couple of games, it's very evident. You can see him kind of grasping that wrist throughout points in the game and trying to shake out his hand. He's dealing with something that I think is probably one of the reasons why his shooting numbers have dipped this year and why he's not consistently shooting as well as we know he can, the way he shot the ball last year from beyond the arc in Big East play at around 42%. This year he's shooting sub 30. And it's not that he's regressed. I think solo ball has definitely improved as a basketball player overall. The strides he made to improve defensively were, again, he's still not the best defender you can put on the floor, but he's good enough to be able to play defense at UConn. And he's definitely increased his level of energy, his level of toughness on that end of the floor. Additionally, I feel like he's done a lot more to be able to create his own shot. He loves getting to that mid-range, and he hits that at a pretty high clip from that 14 to 15-foot area. On top of that, I think he's improved just in attacking the glass and getting on the boards more frequently than he did last year, doing a little bit more to play make for others, although it's still kind of not his strong suit. It's unfortunate because I think that it's a tough spectacle considering that this staff at UConn is so precautious with injuries. Of course, the Braylon thing, I mean, they had him sit for a month to start the year with what he was dealing with after spraining his ankle in preseason practice. Terrace Reed, they held him out of some games, most notably the Arizona one, which you could make the argument Terrace Reed plays that game. UConn wins that gamble, and they're undefeated right now and ranked number 1 in the country. But again, the way this program handles injuries, it's clear that they value postseason play over regular season play, and I completely understand that. I'm completely for that. But if it's something that Dan Hurley's come out and said that most other players would not play through, in regards to Solo Ball's wrist injury, then what exactly is the case with that? And of course, we're not ever going to exactly know. UConn keeps their injuries and really all their information really well under wraps. It's not something that we're probably ever going to know the real answer to, but I think you have to applaud Solo for still just kind of thugging it out and playing hurt where it's very clearly affecting him, I think, and additionally to what's probably going on with him worrying about tanking his draft stock following this season. And yeah, because I'm sure that's a guy who definitely has his eyes set on potentially entering this year's upcoming NBA draft in this summer. So hopefully Solo Ball can kind of get back. The wrist hopefully heals up. It's tough when you're playing so often. You're playing in as physical of practices that UConn runs under Dan Hurley. But Solo, he's still instrumental. I fully believe that he is going to turn the corner, get back to the version of him from shooting the three ball that we know him to be, that what we saw out of him last year, really. And again, I'm not willing to write off Solo just yet. I think Solo, he's going to figure it out. He's going to get going. I promise you, we're going to see a game where he shoots 6 for 6, 7 for 8 from three, and he's going to go off for 30 points. Outside of that, though, I think the other guys that really stood out in this game against Providence were Terrace Reed. I'll start with him. 19 points in this game. He added 6 rebounds as well, a couple blocks, 4 actually, if I'm not mistaken. So he did a really good job protecting the rim. That's something that's really impressed me from Terrace this year. I thought that defensively, last year he definitely had times where he looked a little lost and wasn't in the right spot, but this year he's definitely improved on that end of the floor. I think they made it an issue of establishing Terrace Reed down low really early. They did that with both big men today, on Tuesday night against Providence, where Eric Riba came off the bench, played 21 minutes, shot 100% from the floor with 14 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks to add to that as well. Just what they did, and Terrace Reed was super efficient too, 8 for 9. Again, what they did is just establishing the bigs down low, putting them in the right spots so you would have favorable matchups and be able to finish under smaller defenders and even finish around guys like Oswin Arunze, Duncan Powell, and some of the other guys, the bigger players Providence has on the roster. I just thought the coaching staff did an outstanding job. The players did a great job in finding both Terrace and Eric in the right spots. You got to give credit to Silas there, 6 assists to 0 turnovers, and Malachi with 7 assists to 0 turnovers as well. Just the playmaking both those two guys did in this game was really, really incredible. Silas, I'll get to him now. He had 15 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists to the 0 turnovers I just mentioned. I really do believe he's turned the corner. I think he's made the leap that Tinu made going into late January, mid-February of his first year at UConn, where a lot of people kind of pointed to him as arguably the weak link on that year's team. And of course, we know he went on to arguably be the best player in their NCAA tournament run behind Sonogo. And then obviously the next year was a first-team All-American and the best point guard in the country. I think Silas could definitely very well find himself in that sort of position if he chooses to return for his senior season in STORRS next year and he forgoes the NBA draft this year. But anyways, let's not focus on that because that's in the future. Let's get back to what he did in this game. I think the sequence he had where comes in, gets the defender with the head fake, still takes a contested 3, nails it. UConn comes down, gets a stop. Then in transition, Malachi finds Silas on the left wing. Same move practically, hits the defender with a head fake, dribble to the right, nails it. Providence timeout. That was probably the loudest I heard Gamble that night as someone who was at the game. And that's something that I definitely think a lot of people pointed to. The energy in Gamble, I definitely think has been kind of lacking this year. I think a lot of that has to deal with UConn not winning these games in the manner that they've almost gotten used to in their successful seasons, like in 22, 23, 24, where they were just blowing teams out completely out of the water. They had that killer instinct where they were just putting teams away. And yes, this team still needs to develop that killer instinct and expand leads from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, the way the 23, 24 team was just so good at doing. Because I very much feel that this year's team and that 23, 24 team are similar in the light of how they play as death by 1,000 cuts. It's going to be slow and grueling to start, but eventually, things are going to break open. And we haven't seen the break open part from this year's team just yet, the way the 23, 24 team was just so good at being able to do and really just crushing all hopes of the opposing team's chances of coming back. But overall, still being able to win these closer games, I think is just so important. And Silas, I think, was a big reason why I felt he was dominant in this game. He really had his footprints all over everything that went down in this game. And I think that, the people at Gamble, they got to fuel this team because the guys are going to feed into the energy they're getting from the crowd at both Gamble and People's Bank Arena in Hartford. And it's hopefully going to allow them to maybe pull away further in some of these games that they're winning close right now. But again, Silas, really great game. I fully expect to see this to continue. Super excited to see how he handles the crowd environment that we are going to be getting in Omaha tonight when you guys are seeing this against Creighton. But let's get into Mally. Mally's world in this game, 14 points, 12 points, 100% from three, hit all four that he attempted. And I mean, hey, Malachi's back. I honestly, like I've talked about in the past, don't necessarily know if the reason why maybe he hadn't been playing as much, or you could argue was struggling over the last couple games leading up to this one, was just because I very much felt that Silas has been so good that Dan Hurley just can't take him off the floor if he isn't in foul trouble. And I can fully understand that. I mean, Silas, again, has turned the corner. When he isn't getting into foul trouble, he needs to be on the floor. Just what he brings on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, he's been the instrumental piece in transforming this year's UConn defense as opposed to what it was last year when they couldn't guard anyone on the perimeter. Both Silas and Terrace Reed were named to the Molecule Naismith Defensive Player of the Year award watch list for their midseason picks. And that's definitely an award that I very much feel that Silas deserves to take home at the end of the season. And of course, it could come off as a homer being a UConn fan here, but just I don't know that there's been one player that you could point to across college basketball this year where really one person is the sole reason as for this much of a defensive improvement, because UConn was 75th, I believe they finished out in adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom, and this year they're top 5. And it's very clear Silas has been the driving force. He's been the engine behind that transformation defensively for UConn this year. But getting back to Mally, he had a couple threes off the dribble and then 2 catch and shoot opportunities. And just the job he's done, playmaking for others and defending at a high level when Silas is on and even when he's off the floor. I just think it's invaluable. I think he's, in a way, kind of embraced that Joey California role on this team, where that 22-23 team, of course, had Diarra, they had Naheem Aline, and then they had Joey. And I think of those 3 guys, Joey Calcaterra was the one guy that could really kind of go off in a given game. I think Mally's kind of that same type of player where, of course, I don't think he's as good of a shooter as Joey Calcaterra, but I think what he provides spark-wise, playmaking-wise, defensively, and being able to knock down threes when he can. I mean, people forget Malachi Smith's a career 39% three-point shooter going into this season. So damn near 40%. He can knock him down. And I got to say, he's translated to the high major level really well coming out of Dayton. And I'm just really happy to have Malachi with this UConn program this year. Caravan was not great in this game, for being honest. Very kind of similar to that first half he had against Villanova. I'm not too worried. I just think that this game might have been a little bit of a tougher matchup with some more athletic guys guarding him, like a Steven Vox and Ryan Mila, Jameer Jones. Jameer Jones was great in this game with 20 points. And, UConn's defense wasn't great in this game, I do have to say. But overall, I think they got the stops when they needed them to. And for the most part, it never really felt like UConn was at threat of losing this game. This game would have been a double-digit win had Providence not made a couple more shots down the stretch in garbage time. But still, getting this win, really important. I want to come out and say, kind of going back to the whole energy at Gamble hasn't been great and, the fans being worried. I understand. The offensive struggles, they're definitely there. I know that this team isn't where it needs to be able to win a national championship on the offensive end of the floor. Listen, like I talked about earlier, they still have the whole month of February. January's just ending. They're going to figure it out. This team is too talented. They've had guys in and out of the rotation, injured, trying to figure things out. It's all going to come together at some point. And I think when you try to nitpick, which of course this coaching staff, I'm sure that what the coaching staff does probably rubs off on the UConn fans, where the coaching staff nitpicks everything. They have to. When a team is 21, you got to find the little things to be able to get on your team for, because you want to keep them prepared to face the real possibility of losing a game in March. It's not guaranteed this team will win a national championship, but I think that in a way it's kind of rubbed off on the fans, where I just think that people need to be a little bit more appreciative of what we're seeing out of this team. It's fun seeing these closer games. Of course, they're not against the highest level of opponent in terms of the teams UConn's been playing in Big East play this year. But at the same time, just finding new ways to win, seeing different guys step up every single game and making shots and contributing to big wins for UConn, I think is just something that should not go unnoticed. And listen, they're 20-1 right now. This is a better start than what both the 22-23 and 23-24 teams got off to. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the best overall start for a UConn team since the 98-99 season, with Rip Hamilton and Khalid El-Amin that obviously went on to win the national championship against Duke and take home the program's first Natty Trophy. So, I mean, they're 10-0 in Big East play right now. They got a big game coming up tonight when you guys are seeing this against Creighton and Omaha. Just get behind the team. Listen, the offense is going to get there at some point. I think that shouldn't devalue what you're seeing out of UConn in Big East play. I understand it's a down year for the league, but being this competitive in a conference that's normally tough, and I still think it is tough even in a down year, it's something that shouldn't go underappreciated. Hey, they're the favorites right now to win both the regular season championship and the tournament championship. If UConn can keep up this pace, this should be a year that's remembered for winning the Big East if they aren't able to take home number 7 in Indianapolis this year. But I very much still feel like all those things are on the table. They just need to get things going. They need to continue to defend at a high level the way they have every single game this year, as well as just improving on the offensive end of the floor. And it's going to click at some point. But just really quickly previewing Creighton. Creighton, I think, has definitely been very disappointing in the eyes of both me and Josh covering the Court Storm College Hoops Talk podcast. This is a team that I understood was coming off a year where they lost a lot of their key players, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, who was a pillar of the program for his 5 years in Omaha, Stephen Ashworth, who made a massive leap last year, and Jemiah Neal, who was a great transfer portal addition for the Blue Jays last year. This year has not been all too pretty. I believe they are 6-4 in conference play, and they've lost 3 straight, if I'm not mistaken, and they definitely suffered an ugly loss to Marquette by double digits. I think near 20 points. Nigel Jones just went off in that game, and Creighton was the victim of that. But hey, Omaha, Nebraska, one of the toughest places to play in college basketball. Of course, everyone knows the situations and that Dan Hurley finds himself in with the fans in Omaha. Well, I'm excited. I'm curious to see how Dan Hurley responds to the Blue Jay fans this Saturday. It should be a fun one. The place is going to be jumping. I'm sure they'll have some sort of $1, $2 beer night thing, the way UConn does at Gamble Pavilion. And I'm sure that the place is going to be rowdy. The fans are going to be going crazy. And Creighton's going to come out and play. UConn is everyone's Super Bowl in the Big East. So UConn's been getting everyone's best shot. And I think that's something that's also very important to consider in terms of what I was talking about earlier with how this team's kind of struggled to put teams away. But I think this is pretty much going to take care of everything that I have for you guys today. Really excited for this game at Creighton. Hopefully, if UConn can continue to defend at a high level and be able to make some more shots than they have been, kind of following just building off the Providence game where guys were able to knock down from the perimeter very well. And I think UConn is going to be in a good position to win this one. But hey, you never know when you go into Omaha. Bad track record there, but maybe the ghost of Liam McNeely will come and give the guys some energy on Saturday night. But until the next episode, see you all next time.